Thank you all for joining us today. Happy New Year. We're excited about some of the progress that we've made. Obviously, we've been in the news on issues unrelated to things that are in the press releases, and we'll be glad to answer any questions that you have. And I guess we'll start with Dan.
Thank you. The president has been running around talking to folks to tell them how well their 401ks are doing, and I got mine statement in the mail yesterday, and it's done pretty well over the last year. I'm wondering what investments are doing with the state, if you're seeing any surge at all in returns.
We are seeing a surge. We do not have the numbers in, as you can imagine, with the 26th largest pool of public money in the world. Takes a little while to get everything aggregated. We're looking at a total return north of 13% for a calendar year ended 2017. We obviously have had gains even since the year started, but as many of you are familiar, our returns based on the risk profile that the state pension plan has always used will never go up as much as some pension plans do. And in bad economic times, it doesn't go down as much as some pension plans do. So we're looking at solid returns, Dan, for calendar year ending 2017. We are still have not achieved, on average, our 7.2% assumed rate of return for the last 17 years on average. So we have good years, and we're thankful for that, but we still have a lot of work to do to make sure that this remains one of the top 5 funded pension plans in the United States.
How aggressive are our investments? There is some concern, I guess, among conservative investors that the stock market, the environment right now is similar to what it was, I guess, actually prior to the year 2000. We had a great deal of speculation, which led ultimately to the Great Recession. How conservative are our investments?
Thank you. And Dan, if you have another follow-up question, we'll go back to you in a moment. Thank you for your question, Ed. This pension plan for the last 4 decades has always been managed with a 60-40 or a 40-60 allocation. Either 60% bonds and 40% stocks, real estate, alternative investments, things of that nature, or 40% bonds and 60% everything else. Right now, we're about a 35% bonds fixed income and about 65% in public equity, private equity, alternative investments, real estate, and other types of strategies. Just in the public equity market with our passive investments as well as our active managers, we have over $40 billion sitting in that sleeve currently.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Ed. Did you have a follow-up question?
No, not so much follow-up, but when you look at the overall state budget follow-up, are there areas of concern? And one area of special interest to us now, of course, is the state health plan. I was just looking at the 2017 budget, and if I'm reading that correctly, last year we had about $3.2 billion in spending for the state health plan, and I believe they reserve of about $700 million. Are you satisfied with those figures, and what do you anticipate is going to happen to those figures in 2018?
Ed, I'm not satisfied because the state health plan financially is on an unsustainable course. And it's on an unsustainable course for lots of reasons. Some are blessed reasons, life expectancies. to give you an idea, and I'm not going to answer your healthcare question with a pension answer, but our callers need to always remember that anytime that I talk about somebody who's on the pension plan, chances are they're also on the state health plan. So in the mid-70s, we had approximately 248 90-year-olds who were getting a pension check from the state pension plan. As we sit here this morning, we have over 7,100 90-year-olds getting a pension check from the state pension plan. So you can use that data point to start to answer Ed's question about the state health plan. The reason that we're unsustainable is simply this. The governor's budget funded the state health plan at a 4% growth, and the General Assembly's budget funded the state health plan at a 4% growth. We know that prescription drug costs are going up dramatically more than 4%, and that general health care costs are going up more than 4%. So our only option as fiduciaries of this state health plan, which probably impacts 1 out of 10 adult North Carolinians, is to try to take advantage of our largeness, increase the value, reduce the complexity, and turn these participants in this state health plan into watchdogs. That's our only hope at keeping the state health plan solvent. Now, 2 things I want to point out in terms of how we got here. Number 1, you should be asking yourself, how could a state with one of the 5 best funded pension plans in the country have, on a per capita basis, one of the most bankrupt state health plans? And the answer is simple. That over the last 4 decades, where money every month was going into the pension plan by the employee, the employer they work for, whether it's the DOT or the North Carolina Zoo, every month money was put in the pension plan on behalf of the employee, the employer, and that money was invested, and that's what's created the benefit. That never occurred in the state health plan, and we're on a pay-go basis. So that's one thing to keep in mind regarding the state health plan. We have approximately a $34 billion unfunded liability because no money was ever put in reserve. Now, I'm often asked, well, did this just come up on us? Or is this a result of a new accounting law? The answer is no, it just didn't come up on us. Winston-Salem foresaw this over 30 years ago, and they started putting tens of millions of dollars toward their health care liability, and they're almost 75% defeased on that expense. Mayor Vinroot in Charlotte saw what was going on in Winston-Salem, and he recommended the Charlotte City Council do the same. So 3 decades ago, there are many examples across this state of local governments who foresaw this issue with unfunded health care plans and did something about it. The state never did that. Our second option is that we have to take advantage of our largeness, and we have to start signing contracts that benefit our participants, benefit our taxpayers, and that aren't always to the benefit of big pharmacy or big healthcare. So that's how we got there, and you're exactly right, Ed, as far as the appropriation. The appropriation and the total spend of the state health plan, including pharmaceutical benefits, exceeds the appropriation to the university system or to the total justice and public safety budget of North Carolina. And education and public safety are 2 core functions of state government that most of our citizens think about when they think about money. And I can tell you that if we're not successful in solving this issue with the state health plan, taking advantage of our largeness and turning our participants into watchdogs, then things that people care about, like education and public safety and all other core functions of this state government, will be negatively impacted.
Ray, did you have a question as well for us?
Yeah, I actually had a few questions about the CIO search.
Sure, go ahead.
What is the timeline? Yeah, sorry. What's the timeline for the search? By when do you hope to have a CIO in the office?
Well, a timeline would imply that we are going to do something that may result in hiring the wrong person. So we're not going to do that. We're bringing it up as an agenda item at the Investment Advisory Committee. It's a part of the charter of the Investment Advisory Committee that if asked by the treasurer, that the Investment Advisory Committee will counsel the treasurer regarding a chief investment officer search. So what we're in the process of doing right now is looking at when this has occurred in the past. This treasurer's office has had 7 CIOs in a little over 15 years. Now, if you've had 7 of anything in the last 15 years, cars or otherwise, then you're probably doing something wrong in terms of how you're structured. So we want to make sure that we are structuring this search correctly so that we are able to find a chief investment officer that reflects the philosophy of my administration and the philosophy of the state of North Carolina.
Okay. Are internal candidates be considered for this position?
This will be an open process through NCGov, and either one of the current acting chief investment officers would obviously be considered for this position. But I want to underline that I'm very satisfied with the how these 2 gentlemen, happen to be gentlemen, stepped up to the plate when Kevin suddenly departed.
Okay, just making sure I heard right. You said that they would be considered, right?
WOULD, correct.
Okay.
If they apply.
Yeah, I think so. Sorry?
If they apply.
Right. Okay. Is there any, recruiting firm that's helping with the search?
Not currently, but as I said, we've gone through this 7 times over the last 14 years, and I want to look at the processes that have been used in the past on this topic. Sometimes it's my understanding they've used recruiting firms in the past, and I just want to make sure. I just want to understand what's been done in the past.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for joining us, and thank you for your interest.
I was going to ask Ms. Folwell, I've got one quick follow-up question.
Yeah, we got all day. Go ahead.
Okay, it's going to be quick. I have interest right now, of course, focused on healthcare. We have pending the potential merger of the UNC health system and Carolina's healthcare system in Charlotte. You, I believe, as head chairman of the state health plan, you've got, I believe, a very large stake in the outcome of that. Specifically, we do see many suggestions that such mergers result in higher healthcare costs. Have you, as state treasurer, have you taken a position on this merger? Yeah, that's it. Have you taken a position on this merger?
Short question, but it'll be a long answer. This merger, irrespective of its size, I will be applying the same recipe and rationale that I would regardless of what part of the state it was from or what size it was. This merger impacts the state treasurer's office in at least 4 ways, and maybe even more. Number one, the state treasurer's office, and my being the chair of the local government commission, has approved the issuance of bonds that UNC hospitals have used, and those bonds have been sold, offered, and with the local government commission seal of approval. So number one, we need to determine how this merger impacts the bond rating to those investors who bought those bonds based on our saying that there was the need for these bonds as well as the likelihood that they would be paid back. Second, it impacts us because at UNC Hospital there are thousands of state employees who work there. And those state employees, many of them are on the defined benefit plan, voluntarily involved in the defined contribution plan, maybe to some degree, and definitely on the state health plan. So I want to make sure that we understand how these employees, who as a fiduciary we have the ultimate responsibility to be loyal to them and exercise duty of care, how this impacts them from a pension and health care standpoint. Lastly, and more importantly, these two facilities are facilities that we spend or send hundreds of millions of dollars to every year for health care, which goes to my larger point that anytime something like this is announced, we are totally focused on how it impacts accessibility to health care for our state employees, how it affects affordability of health care for our state employees, and how it affects financially the sustainability of our plan based on what the promises that are being made with this potential merger. And we do not have an official opinion on these four issues yet, but we're not going to be shy about it when we just issue one.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else have any questions? Dan?
This is Dan Webb. Just a quick follow-up on my initial question on the returns. Can I get a little clarity on, you said you expect a 13% return, total return this year, but you're still not going to hit the 7.2% target?
On average, for the last 17 years.
Oh, okay. So that you, okay, so not, you're going to exceed that, obviously, this past year.
Great question.
Which is going to be below.
Yeah, for example, and now I'm not going to try to confuse this, Dan, because we're on speakerphone, but I'm going to take you off course slightly and start talking about fiscal year for a moment. Our fiscal year returns ending in June were, I think, north of 11%, if my memory's right.
Yeah.
Okay, Dan, the previous fiscal year was less than 1. So, on average, just for that 2-year fiscal year period, we did not achieve 7.2% on average. So just take that tiny example and apply it to the last 17 years. We're right up above 6.85%, I think. Don't hold me to that, but if you're wanting to hold me to that, we can get you an answer within an hour. But I can pretty much go on the record to tell you that we still, on average, have not achieved our average assumed rate of return for the last 17 years. Is that attributable to me or any previous treasurer? Treasurer Moore came into office and was pretty quickly hit with the tech crisis that was surrounding also the terrible attack on our country called 9/11. And then Treasurer Cowell came into office and was pretty soon hit with the housing crisis that afflicted the value of our portfolio. And I don't want to get into a math lesson today, but just to remind the people on this call that anytime you lose 25% of your money, you have to make 33% on your money to get back to where you were. And in the downturn of 09, 08 or 09, if my memory's right, we lost 37% of our money. And so in addition to that, we sold some things at the bottom, which I had absolutely nothing to do with. The distributions out of this plan to the pensioners, which including the local plan, we're spending almost $500 million every 30 days. That's not a net number because there are contributions coming in. So you can see the combination of those things leads us to the conclusion, and it's the mathematical conclusion, that the plan even with this good year, has not achieved its assumed rate of return on average for the last 17 years. Thank you guys for joining us. There's a lot going on in the state right now, but fortunately, at least in Raleigh, we have weather that we can all walk around the building with, and maybe you're enjoying some of that today in your part of the state. And we appreciate your interest in bringing this to us, and Brian and Stephanie and Frank and Sam and our staff for putting this together. We know sometimes we have 3 or 4 people on the call. We have 3 or 4 people who are just listening and don't ask questions on the call, and then sometimes we have more than that, but that doesn't keep us from doing what I promised this time last year, and that is to once a month have a call where you can ask me anything.